The pyramids up to the present time have not had a thorough explanation of how they formed, although there have been many different theories of researchers and explorers, like the strange cut of a giant rock. This, before talking about an explanation of my own on the Earthmen TV channel. We will walk around the pyramid with the discovery of Dr. Derek Muller, from Canada. The Great Pyramid is the tallest man-made structure for nearly 4,000 years, only surpassed by the Eiffel Tower in 1889. This pyramid is 147 meters high. We will listen to this doctor's comment about how the pyramids were built.
But it's not free.
How much? What makes the pyramids even more impressive is that these structures were built over 4,500 years ago, when Egyptians didn't have wheels or steel. The only metal available was copper and copper alloys. It took about 2 million stones to build that pyramid. Well, I call them stones, giant rocks. Somewhere between 1.5 and 3 tons each. Pyramids took about 20 to 30 years to make. It's a long time, but if you think about the number of stones, a couple million stones in every pyramid, you'd have to be laying a stone roughly once every 3 minutes. If you consider a regular workday like a 10-hour, 12-hour workday.
Nobody knows how they build it. It's still secret. But a lot of people, they try to do the best to give you some information about how they did it. But we must say it's secret. They did, and they take the secret of them. Nobody knows.
No plans survive to show us how the pyramids were built. So perhaps it's not surprising that this is the subject of countless conspiracy theories involving aliens, time travel, or lost technologies. But there is a less far-fetched myth, which has become widely accepted, that the pyramids were built by slaves. But recent discoveries suggest the pyramid builders were not slaves at all. They were skilled workers. Well-preserved tombs near the pyramids suggest that their hard labor and sacrifice were rewarded. If these workers had been slaves, they would not have received such honorable burials. But how did they actually manage to build the pyramids? One of the things I find really interesting is that the Egyptians didn't know about wheels. So they didn't really even use rollers, as far as we can tell. I mean, these rocks would have been carted across the desert on sleds. There's a famous diagram of this giant statue being pulled by 172 men. And that statue would have weighed somewhere on the order of 68 tons or something. This would normally create a lot of friction, but the sand was wetted in front of the sled. Experiments show this would reduce the pulling force required by half. The internal stones of this pyramid are all limestone, which is a bit softer and easier to work. You can imagine them working it with those copper chisels that they had. Some of these blocks may have been actually sawed through using copper saws. Now, you wouldn't think that copper could really cut rock, but if you put an abrasive in there, like the sand, you could actually wear away the stone. Probably be a very difficult and labor-intensive job. Something that you don't really think about is that when you build a pyramid, you need to build it on level ground. You can actually see there how they had to level out that ground. Well, it's speculated that when the Nile flooded, they put the floodwater into a channel and see where the high parts were. So the inside was made of this limestone. The outside of this pyramid was actually made of granite. Much harder stone. I'm at the granite quarry in Aswan, where they would have quarried the stones that were used in the pyramids at Giza. Now that is an incredible feat because this is nearly 1,000 kilometers away from Giza. And when the Nile flooded, water would come right through here so that they could move all the stones quarried here, this granite. They could move this back up to Giza and use it on the pyramids. These would have had to have been floated down on rafts. Now, quarrying this would have been really hard. Granite is one of the hardest rocks because it contains quartz. And quartz on the hardness scale is about a 7, where diamond is a 10. So how would you dig a massive trench like that? Basically, the technique was just to smash the dolerite rock into the granite over and over and over again. They would make about 5 millimeters progress per hour. So there is no clear account of how the pyramids were actually built, but the best guess is that ramps were used. And in fact, some ramps have been found on incomplete pyramids, but you can't build just a straight ramp, a long straight ramp, and keep putting the rocks up. I mean, the problem with that is the ramp actually ends up taking up more material than the pyramid itself. I think a ramp which sort of wraps around the pyramids is probably the most likely thing. The top third of the height of the pyramid actually only accounts for about 4% of all the material in the pyramid. That's why it's suspected that levers were actually used to finish off the pyramid, to do the top levels. Now, the pyramids have clearly weathered, but in the past they would have been a brighter white because they would have used a white limestone to cover the whole face of that pyramid. And then the very top may have been covered with electrum, which is a mixture of gold and silver. So if you can imagine, that would be a pretty spectacular sight. The reason these pyramids are shaped this way is so they represent sun rays. Imagine what that would have looked like when it was first built, with a shiny metallic top and smooth white finish on all of those sides. I think that would have been a sight to behold.
Here we try to consider an interesting experiment by Dr. Muller. An object weighs 40 pounds, about 19 kilograms. It is very difficult to raise high under normal conditions. It takes a lot of effort for the doctor to raise it. However, when this steel gyro is given the momentum to revolve around itself at a fairly high speed, let's see what happens.
That was perfect. Now I am going to release my left hand and holding only with my right hand at the end of the shaft.
Now it's much easier to raise with just one handle on one side of the handle. This shows that when an object vibrates or vibrates to a certain extent, its vibration will reduce gravity. Or in other words, its own vibration will gradually reduce the impact of gravity. As the information from above shows, the amount of stone to build the pyramid is very large, millions of stone blocks. Very heavy, from a few tons to many tens of tons. It is very impossible to transport it from far away places to build the pyramid with ordinary human strength. So personally, the admins suppose that the pyramid was built by a civilization that preceded the present civilization or by an extraterrestrial civilization. Unfortunately, after certain events on the Earth, they were gone, or left. The remains are only stone monuments, scattered not only in Egypt but also in several other places on the Earth's surface, including the bottom of the Atlantic Sea. Importantly, the civilization that built these pyramids was able to solve the problem of the enormous weight of so many blocks of stone. Assuming one possibility is that they can charge the rocks with so much energy that the rock molecules vibrate so strongly that the rock loses gravity, similar to the above experiment. The blocks of rock become much lighter, possibly even in a suspended state. When their level reached the technique that could make the blocks of rock float, it was not difficult for them to cut the cutting techniques exactly like what we are seeing. In addition, the stone blocks can even be calculated, cut and arranged with the help of artificial intelligence, so the construction proceeds and manages and supervises the construction of the pyramids largely thanks to automation management. After completing the construction, the energy is withdrawn, the stone blocks return to their original state, with great weight making a solid and solid construction. With the above assumption, the construction of pyramids with techniques to reduce gravity can help explain the problem of building giant pyramids with many large blocks of stone becomes somewhat reasonable. However, another big question is what to build pyramids for.